For many years now, Russ and Craig have had many wide-ranging conversations with folks from all over the gaming world. This is one of those conversations.
D6G, the Lost Chapter.
Hey, and thanks for coming back to Dunkin' Donuts and the Lost Chapters. Today, of course, with us, we have Tom Vasel of the Dice Tower. Tom, welcome to Dunkin' Donuts. Excellent, excellent. What type of donut are you enjoying today?
A strawberry crumb donut, which they apparently only sell up in your area and not down here in Florida.
Oh, nice. Now, they created the little star-shaped donuts down there? Have you seen the star shapes?
You mean the chocolate ones with chocolate inside?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
How do they make those? They're yeast donuts. How do they make them star-shaped? That still puzzles me.
Everyone down here eats Krispy Kreme. I'm the Dunkin' Donut fan I know.
Oh, good on you. That's good. So today, Craig, what are we talking about today in the Lost Chapters?
Today, people ask us a lot of questions, when we're out in public, especially at Dunkin' Donuts. And, how do we deal with the micro nano fame that we've garnered? And, we kind of tilt our shades back and we just smile. But the questions that we get most often are like, how do you maintain that sterling silver armor of ethics with just all of the stuff that people throw at you as successful podcasters and the temptations that meet us at every turn. I mean, it's just crazy. And we thought, why don't we give the little people what they want?
Wow.
Really.
The little
and
people?
Why don't we just show them the righteousness of our souls and really, a little guidance maybe into how they should live their lives ethically.
Wow.
That wasn't. I thought that's what I got from the brief. That's not what we're doing.
I don't think so, Tom. Is that what we're doing?
Oh. Wow. Well, this is going to be a lot more boring than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, it's not going to be boring.
Oh, no, it's not. So, Tom, have you...
I have so many words to say on this subject.
So, as I'd like to dub you the dean of board gaming podcasting.
Oh, I would say the dean of podcasting.
Yeah, why don't we just go all the way?
Yeah.
You must get
Here's
a lot
your
of...
little hat.
You must get a lot of questions.
Worry, nobody will look at you funny. We're at Dunkin' Donuts.
Right. Do you get a lot of questions about this? That, about ethics and podcasting? What do you do with a review copy? We'll get into the details in a minute, but do you get a lot of that often?
I don't get it as much directly. I do get it every once in a while. I get usually new people who are starting to review will email me like, well, I don't know what to do. I'll get that a lot. Mm-hmm. But I see a thread started on this subject on Board Game Geek probably bi-weekly,
yes.
maybe, yeah. Which I, for those who are semantical, I mean every other week when I say that.
Thank you, Tom. Well, let's jump in. So basically, it's sort of areas that are gray or potentially fuzzy. And I actually had a listener who's also happened to be a local gamer with us actually just asked me not too long ago. Said, well, which of the games do you review or review copies? Do you guys get paid to review games? And so I thought it'd be kind of interesting to talk about some of that stuff right now, especially since we have the dean of board game podcasting with us today, Tom.
Okay, well, I don't. So here's the deal. I think this whole thing could be negated by just me saying the fact I don't lie.
There you go.
Oh, okay. I mean, I lie, but I don't lie on my podcast. And that's it. End of conversation, but it's obviously not the end of the conversation. So let's continue.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, first of all, the biggest question we get a lot is review copies. So,
right, and it's not so much a question; it's almost quite often it's an assumption that you podcast because you get cool review copies, and then you're just building your game stable.
Right,
it's the only reason I do it. Man.
Clearly, the whole plan was to put hours and hours into this so we could get hundreds of games in our closet.
Right.
However, without being snarky, I think for a lot of people when they first start reviewing, when you get that first copy in the mail, there's this euphoria like, wow,
it's pretty cool.
I did not pay for that game.
Right.
And I promise you that feeling goes away.
But it is neat that first time.
So let's talk about that, because let's talk about the ethics around that. So first of all, when someone sends you a review copy, are you ethically or morally obligated to review the game?
No, baloney.
Yeah, I would
100% have to agree. In fact, I would say many people, when they send us a review copy, probably wouldn't want to hear a review once we'd looked at it.
Well, there's that too. So I think one of the things is, and we kind of say that to people when they ask us to send us a review copy, we have this little boilerplate email that we send out that basically says, we're going to look at your game for sure. If it interests us, we'll play it. If we love it, we'll review it on the show. But we'll mention that we played it on our achievements, and that's pretty much all we can promise you. Another thing that comes up around this area is disclosing the fact that you get review copies.
Right.
Actually, technically, well, it's arguably the law, because I believe they've just passed a law recently that bloggers must now disclose whenever they get free review copies of things. And I guess the question is, are we bloggers?
That's what we got to worry about in this country.
But I know.
Well,
right?
here's the deal.
Those damn bloggers and their review copies of games.
Right.
Eric and I stick a blurb at the end of our show that say, yeah, we get some review copies. I don't know what Eric says. He says it nicer and fancier.
No, he does. And I think it's wise. We just say it. Like, I'll literally say in achievements, hey, Catalyst sent us a copy of Leviathans. I was looking at it. It looks awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll try to say it. But but we're also trying to be very clear when we review something that if we bought it or not. Like, we got a review copy of Rune Wars, which we then gave away as a prize, and then I went out and bought my own copy. Yeah. And I like it so much I bought it. So one of the things with the D6G is we try not to keep any of the games we get. We try to always give them away as prizes.
That was probably the first ethical question that we faced and actually had an answer in place before we needed one at the very beginning when we started podcasting.
Well, you know what, though? I might disagree slightly on this subject.
Yeah, go for it.
At first, I was worried about that. When I started reviewing, I emailed some of the big reviewers, and I said, what am I supposed to do with these games when I'm done with them? Can I keep them? Is that allowed? And, I see some of you reviewers are selling them. Is that okay? I'm at the point now where I think that getting a free review copy is not enough. I know that sounds bad. I know it sounds greedy, but they are getting a huge promotion out of the review that is worth way more than a copy of that game cost. Mm-hmm. So my opinion is, as a reviewer, once you get that game, if you want to throw it off a roof, if you want to give it to somebody, if you just want to keep it, it's yours. And I think that's a small payment for you doing the review. I don't see that unless it's maybe some big giant Settlers of Catan Deluxe 3D or the War of the Ring, which no one has still bought me, deluxe copy. I keep trying to get a review copy of that, and they don't send me one.
What's wrong with that? I don't understand.
Now, interestingly, I actually agree with you, Tom, and I don't think that there is any sort of ethical obligation for us to pass on those games. The reason that I like that we do it is it gives me a little bit of a feeling that like I can prove to you that I'm not giving this review because I got this game for free, sort of thing, which I shouldn't have to do. But I like having that as a fallback position in my own head,
But at the same time, when people do say that, I have 400 games in my collection. I promise you I've gotten way more than 400 review copies.
Yeah.
And I said, when I was going full time with podcasting, I said to Laura, my wife, I said, I can make some money by selling some of these review copies. Oh my. I might make $5 a game because by the time I sell it and ship it and pack it up and send it to the post office and run the eBay auction and spend an hour trying to figure out, it's so not worth it.
The hourly rate's not worth it. Now, one thing, I guess the question really is, there's two sides, and I think the first question is, what do we owe the company who spent money to get us the game? And I think you're right. If the game gets reviewed, they've gotten so much promotion out of it. If your podcast is a certain size or larger, and well liked and well respected, then you're doing such a service for that company. They're getting their value out of it. I guess the only place where it gets tricky is listeners might say, how do we know we're getting an honest review if they've given you a game for free? That's sort of the angle on it is, do you, if let's say it's a company that you really like and you want to get more of their games early and free because you like their games. So are you less inclined to give a very negative review of one of their games because you don't want to cut off the gravy train? I mean, is that sort of I guess that's sort of the mindset of, well, that's why you guys always give positive reviews, because you just want a Fantasy Flight to keep sending you free copies of their awesome games. Is that ever an issue?
Maybe I can see people saying that, and people certainly think it, but it's it couldn't be farther from the truth in how it actually works. There is not a single company out there that I can think of that is worth their salt that will send you a game, and if you fairly treat it, even if you're negative, even if you trash it, but at least you're fair, they will continue to. It's still publicity for them, and unless you trash all their games, and there are some reviewers who trash all the games from specific companies,
Right.
then I wouldn't send that guy my reviews. But if you're not doing it,
Right.
even like, for example, Fantasy Flight, I haven't been a big fan of. I didn't like Gears of War last year and other games, but, so I said so. But they didn't say, well, we're never talking to you again.
Right.
Now, I have a special email folder from companies that say, we hate you.
Wow.
Well, they don't necessarily say that, but they usually say something like, you didn't understand the game.
Right.
And I keep those because those people will never send me games again, but I also go to sleep at night not caring.
Right. Right. So yeah, I think that's that's sort of I think that's pretty much the whole area around review copies. I think I agree with you completely. I think that as a podcaster, I like to give them away because I feel a little bit of guilt in that if a company sends me one of their games and I just don't like it, but they took the time to get it to me early, they took the time to, ship it to me or do whatever they had to do to get me a copy of it. And if I don't love that game, I still feel like I'm okay mentioning I played it on achievements. And I'll say my real feelings. I didn't like the game, but I played it. And then giving it away as a prize as sort of as an extra promotion for the company because they went to all that trouble for us. But I will honestly say, look, I didn't like this game. And we don't review games we don't like on the show, not because we don't want to give the company bad press, just that we don't think we do hour-long reviews. No one wants to listen to an hour of this game sucks.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's.
Oh yeah. Well, and I guess that's where it's different because I usually review almost everything I get.
Right.
So I'm going to give it to them. And I want to insert something here. I do not mean, dear listeners, to sound arrogant in what I'm saying. I get a lot of garbage about this, and this is my one chance to talk about this. But I really feel honestly that you should tell the truth. And so I will. But anyway, back to what I was saying. With these games, what I normally do is I stick them all on the shelf, and then when people come to my house, they're like, hey, I'll say, hey, just take one off the shelf. Sometimes I'll sell it to them, but then they'll hover over a box, and I'll say, please don't do that. You don't. If you love yourself, you will not take that game. And there are many games I've just thrown away because I would feel really bad having given that to somebody.
You don't want to be a link in that chain.
You don't want to be.
That chain of misery.
But there's been games I've hated. Someone comes like, I'll say, just take it. They'll come back. That was a great game. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Well, there's more. I got more.
Oh, well, let me introduce you to this special closet.
Right.
People are like, but then when the good games come, people are like, you didn't like Descent 2.0, right? No, sorry guys. It's fun.
Right. So let's move on from review copies to sort of maybe the review process. And I guess one of the first things we should just say up front is, or maybe answer up front, are we journalists? I get this a lot. Are you a journalist? Or you consider yourself a journalist? Tom, do you consider yourself a journalist?
Yeah. I mean, as much as I don't think because CBS pays you that makes you any more of a journalist than if you're a blogger. I mean, obviously there's a level of training, professionalism difference, but I've seen these guys who work for the New York Times review board games, and they pretty much don't know what they're talking about. So I'm definitely a better journalist than them about board games, but I don't walk around and say I'm a journalist.
Right.
I say I do an internet radio show because there's still people who don't know what podcasts are.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Now, Russ, why don't you define what you mean by a journalist? Like, there are specific attributes of journalism that I think you're referring to.
Yeah, well, I guess there's two sides to the journalism question, right? Well, first one is the trained journalist moniker, whatever that is. And I'm not even sure that journalists get a moniker like lawyers and doctors do. But you know, I and this comes up more in the blogosphere, right? Because you have bloggers doing things, and then you know, are they protected by journalist shield laws? Are they not? All that stuff. Not that that's relevant to board games, because clearly we don't talk about anything that important. But I don't. I guess I consider. I look at our show in particular more of as an entertaining show than a journalism show. Although we do talk about news and we do review games, but our review angle is more, here's how the game works. We have this rating system, which is sort of a joke. I mean, it's got some value, but really if you listen to the review, you'll understand the game well enough to make your own decision. So it's not really a review as much as it is almost like a walkthrough of the game, right? And so I don't know if I personally look at that as journalism. I mean, we do have a news segment, but anybody who listens to it knows it's not very serious. So it's
nothing we do is very serious.
No, I mean,
now that you mention it.
So I kind of look at us as like, like the Daily Show of.
Don't go there.
Well, maybe not there, but you know what I'm saying. Like we're kind of, I don't really look at us as like hard hitting, serious game reviews. We're just sort of having fun and talking about things people like to talk about and reviewing games. So, but now Nicole's got a much more different position. She's actually reviewing stuff, for different blogs that are much more journalistic in nature. So I don't know where I'm kind of with Tom. I don't know where the line is drawn. If you're doing things that are journalists, I have people in my real job. I'm in IT. We have a lot of computer programmers. A lot of computer programmers, they didn't go to school for computer programming. They went to engineering. They did something else. They went to architecture school. They went to business school. And then they self-taught themselves computers. And now they're professional computer programmers making a good living at that. Are they computer programmers? Yes. Did they study it in school? No. So you could be a journalist and do everything a journalist does in a particular industry and not have trained for it. I don't think that's mutually exclusive.
Does this keep you awake at night? Because I've never really thought about.
I don't know. I think about these things. It's kind of weird, isn't it? Anyway, I just thought that was sort of interesting. I don't know. What do you think, Craig?
Yeah. Well, I'm all tangled up. My sling. Yeah. When I was looking at your notes about journalism, what I was thinking more is what do we owe our listeners? Mm-hmm. For instance, I would say a journalist owes the listener, their honest reaction to something, or well, that's more like a commentator, but their honest reaction to something as opposed to I don't even know, like a PR guy or something. Like, I mean, I recently, and I'm not going to name any names, and I'm not going companies or podcasters or bloggers, but it's I've seen a few places where, and maybe it's just that I disagree with what they're saying, but it seems almost as if they're like blowing sunshine, times 1,000 up skirts left and right on stuff that I just don't see the support for it there. And I'm just wondering, like, these are both new guys and really established guys, and I'm in my head I'm going like, how can you say that? Like no, none of us know that yet. You know what I'm saying? So is this because you're trying to get it into the good graces of these companies, which goes back to, what do we owe the company for giving us that access? And I think, and what happens with our show, and I think what we do, and I know it's what Tom does, is you get the honest reaction of what's happening. And if we don't like something, it's a very downplayed reaction, and it's, we played it, not really for us, and we move on.
Well, I don't necessarily do that.
No, you don't do that. That's what we do. You're even more honest.
Well, here's the thing. Well, I think that, Russ, you were talking about journalism. One of my problems I have with when I watch CNN or Fox News, whichever one I'm watching, those guys are kind of boring. I would love it if, one of they crack the joke in the middle of a news story.
Right.
And they try to be so very serious. I don't want to be that about board games because this is entertainment.
Right.
Absolutely.
I want to enjoy it. So, like, for example, I did a funny review. Well, some people thought it wasn't funny when I threw Hawaii into the garbage can. I don't know if you guys saw that review.
I did actually see that one.
Okay. Basically, the review opened, then we threw it in the garbage can, and the review closed. Now, that would actually be a pretty mean review. Well, kind of. But I immediately the next day put out the real review, where we talked about the review and the game and how I didn't like it that much and such. And I also emailed the designer to apologize. But I wanted to throw the entertainment in there, and I'll do that occasionally. The game will just do something off the wall because people like entertainment. Now, some people don't. And oddly enough, some of these people play board games.
Right.
But I have found that the people who yell the loudest about this, who are the most worried about there's people who are constantly emailing me or posting threads that I need to have an objective review. I don't even know what that is. Right. I'll just send them a copy of the rule book.
Right.
And so I've gotten more open with my dislike. I used to worry that I was going to offend people. Mm-hmm. And I did offend people. There was one very well game designer who I shall not mention who did not talk to me for almost a year.
Wow.
After I trashed one of his games, and then I lauded another one of his games, and now we are friends again. But and things like that can happen. So I have to be careful. I always, if I trashed a game, I'm only trashing the game, not the designer,
right,
not the company, not the people who played it and did enjoy it.
Right.
If I see you playing, for example, Vasco da Gama, I do not sit there and go, man, those people are creeps.
Yeah.
I can't stand those people. Now, I do think that about 18xx games, but no, I'm kidding. Railroad Train.
Send emails to tom@thedicetower.com.
but at the same time, so people take a criticism against their game very personally.
Right.
Yeah.
And for all this garbage that we get over, are you too positive? Are you do you like games too much because you get free review copies? I promise that I get 10 times more response over the negative stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't play the game 47 times. If you've only played it 46 times, you did not reach the true depth of the game.
Oh, yeah.
Or you didn't understand this or that. The amount of backlash to a negative review is so much more.
Oh yeah. Well, we have the same thing because we'll get most people say our show is way too happy and all that, but once in a while when we even dip into negative, like anytime I talk about Games Workshop, for example, if I say even the remotest thing that's not very kind to them, I'll get emails up the wazoo about, well, if you only understood more, blah, 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 whatever. And it's just...
Or you get dismissed is what you get.
Well, yeah, or that. So it's totally basically,
dismissed.
people are very defensive of their favorite games.
They're a jerky company, people, okay? The jerkiest one I've dealt with. There, you can email me now. I listened to your podcast. We talked about them, and Craig kept trying to steer you back into positivity. All right, well, we don't want to say bad things about them.
Yeah. And the one episode where I gave up and didn't try to steer him, I got bad mouthed. So
right.
There's really a no win. It's a lose-lose.
You became the evil guy. Even Craig was bashing them. No, I was just being quiet.
I wasn't even. I was just quiet.
So one thing before we move on from the journalism thing, I think what Craig was hinting was like when you get early access, right? It's tough because
it's very. I think it's very hard.
You want to be fair because it isn't finished, right? Like a good example of this. We have two recent examples of this, right? We're going to talk about Descent 2 next week in the podcast, and Tom's working with us on that. And Tom had early access to it. Now, you want to be honest, but at the same time, you want to be fair. When we saw Leviathans back at Gen Con last year, we were not impressed. We went on the air and said we weren't impressed with it. Now, they did say those weren't all the rules. Those were just the demo rules. It was very simple. And so, to be fair to the company, they've sent us a new review copy of the finished game, and we're gonna.
We didn't get a review copy when we were disappointed. That was the demo of the work in progress at Gen Con.
So when Origins came out this year, Catalyst said, "Look, we know you didn't like the demo. Here's the full copy, and see what you think. Strings attached. Just see what you think. So we're going to look at it again and give it a fair shake. I think that's the best we can do. But if we still don't like it, we're going to say so, right? So I think that's and a Descent 2 is the same way. We all love Descent, but if the preview doesn't look great, we're going to say so. I think you kind of have to. But it is. I think it's tough sometimes when you're getting an early access to something, to be really critical.
I also think if you're new at podcasting or blogging or whatever it is you're doing, I think it's harder for most people when you get those first instances of early access to do that. To be like, well, if I'm honest, I'm endangering my new status, and that new status is really cool. You know what I mean? Right. And I think some people just maintain that all the way through whatever career, if you want to call podcasting a career. Some of us can, right, Tom? But whatever. But
I'm eating bread for dinner, sir.
My
podcast doesn't cost money when people listen to it. I'm just saying.
Wow.
Yet. But anyway. No, listen, here's the deal, though. When you're a new reviewer, honestly, these guys get bombarded with review copy requests from people all over the place. The ones who I've talked to the publishers, and they'll tell me they'll get it weekly, all the time, from people who have done one game review.
Right.
And people who just want the game. So most of these publishers send out very few. You would be surprised at how few get sent out, unless it's a new publisher who has a bad game, that he wants people to play because his mom said it was good.
Right.
He tends to send out a lot. So the new reviewers, they get a lot of garbage games in the beginning. And I watch these guys carefully, and I see how they handle it. And if they say, I loved it, then I say, I'm not reading any more from this guy because I got that game too.
Right.
A good example of this would be recently a Russian company, and I can't remember the name of the Russian company, made a bunch of small games. And a couple of them are okay. And a couple of them are mediocre to poor at best. And I saw reviewers all over the net gushing over these games. And I said, I played that game. And these people, you are misrepresenting that. And I know it's because it's your first review copy. Shame on you. Shame on you. But I don't want to say these things publicly, even though I just did.
Yeah, you'll just say them on our show. Thanks.
Well, you know.
It's okay. It's the Lost Chapters. 5 people listen to it. You're fine.
That's right. You're safe.
But I mean, I have to be very careful because maybe they are being honest about it.
Right. Yep.
I tend to think people are honest. There's a couple reviewers out there who I won't name who I've never seen a negative review from. And I do wonder sometimes, but it's also possible, like Scott Nicholson, he always said that he just never reviewed negative games because he didn't want to put that energy into a game he didn't like.
Right. That's where we are.
Yeah, and that's where we're coming from.
I think that's a good attitude.
Yeah.
But I also, Tom, I respect that you take the time. I think that's what makes your show really awesome is that you take the time to go in and say, I'm going to beat myself up and learn this game that I first blush I know I'm not going to like just because I want to be able to talk about it and at least tell people why it's not enjoyable credibly, not just say the game sucks. You know, here's why it's not great because this mechanic and this mechanic and this mechanic don't work well together, and these components look like crap or whatever. You don't put it that way, but you put it very elegantly and say, look, this is. And I think that's great. And I think and it's definitely a great service because a lot of people.
My game group doesn't think that, but yes,
right. Well, I think it is a great service because there's going to be games out there. As much as shows like ours and Scott Nicholson's would just list games we like, there's so many other games out there. You'll take a chance on a game, but if someone like you was out there saying, look, this game is really not great, then at least you know that now so you can avoid it.
I will say I do have a problem. I'm going to say this here because I almost never say it. I do have a problem with people who do either negative or positive reviews, but they do it in a super crude, super idiotic way. I don't know how to explain it, where it's over the top. I can't even show it to someone, the review, because it's like muck raking. Right. I don't know how to explain it, and they get a couple people who laugh at it. I'm surprised at those reviews. I think sometimes the crossing the line, those people I would not consider journalists.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to remember. I think the ethical obligation we have to the game designer is he or she's put a lot of time into this, right? So we need to
not always, but yes.
Well, okay, right. Theoretically, someone's put a lot of care into it. Theoretically, and so we should treat that with respect, even if we don't like it. We need to say, look, why we don't like it. If we're going to take the time to say we don't like it, we need to express why and give them constructive criticism. So as you said, so once this designer knows that maybe didn't want to talk to you for a year, but then heard your good review and likes you now, maybe he can actually get constructive feedback from you now, as opposed to just ignoring you.
One of the things that you put in the show notes here, we are now in a kind of a different era with this because the Kickstarter phenomenon, these guys want people to give them money. Right. So they are sending out review of prototypes to people. Mm-hmm. I mean, I probably get a request from someone on Kickstarter almost once a day, probably now at this point, sometimes more than that. And people are taking these, they'll send them to anybody who will review it at this point. And so we're seeing a lot of reviews of games that aren't really, we don't even know what the game's going to be like.
They're not baked yet. Right.
Now, when I do previews of some of these where they pay me to do the preview, and I'm very cautious to say that that's not a review. I will tell you if I like something in it, but if I don't like something in it, I'm probably not going to say it because I'm doing a paid advertisement for them. Mm-hmm. And that's not the same as a review. But when I call the designers and talk to them about these things, on a preview, I'm brutal.
Yeah.
I called a guy today and I said, look, don't take this the wrong way. I'm just, when I tell you the things I don't like, because you can still fix them.
Right.
Once it's been done, I could say, I wish you had done it this way, but, you can't change it. So, but when it's in the prototype form and your rule book looks horrible, I'm going to say, your rule book looks horrible. Fix it before it goes to the printer.
Well, that's a great segue into. I wanted to talk about advertising and sponsors, and that's a great segue into it because you're basically saying, look, you accept advertising dollars or sponsorship dollars from people to preview a game either on Kickstarter or whatever. How much vetting do you do of that kind of thing? Right? I mean, will you advertise any game on there, or are you kind of like, look, if it doesn't meet my minimum standards of being at least reasonably enjoyable, we won't talk, or how do you make those decisions?
I think of everything we said on the show so far, this is the one where I think you actually have to look and sort it out.
Right.
The whole review copy thing, I think, is a red herring, and that it's not nearly as bad as people think it is. I think that it's not that big of a deal. This, on the other hand, can be a big deal.
Yeah.
Because, for example, companies, I'm reviewing the game that I'm about to advertise, or or I'm reviewing other games from that company, etc. But you wanted to know how I pick people?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, as much as you can talk about. Do you have a vetting process, or do you guys? I mean, how do you guys decide if you want to accept a sponsor?
It depends. If you listen to me when we advertise them, I pick them basically. If they say we will give you money, I say okay.
No, that's fair.
With the exception of I absolutely straight out refuse anything that's online gambling, poker, because I get tons of requests for.
Yeah.
But if you listen to us when we talk about these, when we do the advertisements on the show, if it's something that I like, wow, it's easy. I just go overboard. I like it. Love
the energy
it.
shifts, right?
Otherwise, we're reading. You can kind of tell we're kind of giving you the good points of it and such. But we're very cautious not to ever say anything like, we recommend this.
Right.
And a listener gave us the idea, and we do it now, where we play music in the background when we're doing one of these ads.
To distinguish it, yeah.
Advertisement, not our opinion.
Yes.
That's a good idea. And I think it's a good point. I think we have two areas where this gets fuzzy, right? So we have the shout-outs, which are really short. We have the Twitter rule now, so 120 characters, whatever it is for your shout-out.
44, right?
44, right?
40.
So there's that rule, and those don't really get vetted except for, you can't. It's a family show, right? So PG-13, and you can't advertise things, as you said, gambling or that kind of stuff. But those can be basically whatever you want, as long as it's not getting too political or too off topic. So if you just want to say, hey, check out my Kickstarter campaign, but I think it's very clear in our shout-outs that it's actually a listener saying, Bob says he wants you to know about this.
Right, yeah.
So that's not us injecting any opinion there. The other thing we have, though, is our what we call the live ads, which are basically us talking in sort of like talk show radio form about a product that is a sponsor of the show. And what we've decided to do is you can't become a sponsor of our show until you send us your product, let us see your product, whatever it is, and it has to be of reasonable quality that we feel comfortable recommending it. So I wouldn't want to ever have someone buy this on my recommendation, even if I'm getting paid to recommend it, and have them say, this bag, my army broke apart in this bag.
Yeah.
So we've kind of taken we kind of do say you have to be. Now, that's not to say that we wouldn't take a different sponsor than the best in the industry. It just means that we want to make sure that the sponsor's at a certain level of quality, so we don't offer something that would. But
all of our sponsors are the best in their chosen industries.
Well, what do you do, for example? Let's say the War Store decides to add 20% to all their prices, and they're advertising on your show.
Yeah.
And it comes to what's in the news, and you want to announce that and say that seems kind of idiotic, but they're a sponsor.
That's an excellent question.
That's a good question. So so far.
And I picked the War Store because they would not do something like that.
No, and they're also a sponsor of our show. So, but
well,
yes,
well, that I knew.
Right. So that's a good question, and that's a great. What do we do about that? Right. So we had it come close a couple times when we had some cease and desist happen between Battlefoam and other companies, and Battlefoam was getting a lot of negative press, and we reported it on the news, but then we had Romeo on to talk about it. So. I don't know. Is that ethical? I don't know. We had him on. From his word, the listeners could hear what he's had to say, and that was what it was, but we still reported what was going on, right? So I think that's sort of what we need to do. But I don't know if our news is hard hitting enough to where that happen, but that's a good point. And one of the things I worry about a lot with our sponsors is right now, Craig and I have talked a lot about the idea, would we ever accept a sponsor of a product that we review? Because right now, all of our sponsors are game support sponsors, right? So Battle Foam and the War Store, kind of like, Tom, you have Litco, right? They're sponsors that support the games we play, but they're not, Fantasy Flight is not a sponsor. Stronghold Games is not a sponsor. So I can feel like I can review a Stronghold or Fantasy Flight game honestly without any loss of, because some of the video game review sites get into trouble when they put a negative review up of a game and all of a sudden EA pulls all their advertising from, which is,
Do they really?
That's happened before with some major blogs, like GameSpy got in trouble, or it was IGN. One of them got in major trouble because they did a review and EA threatened to pull it, so they didn't do the review early, and they get rules about you can't review our game too soon so they get very strict rules from their advertisers.
Yeah.
And you look at like magazines like Consumer Reports takes no advertising for that exact conflict. So there's definitely a precedent in other areas that this is a big deal, and you could totally see the conflict of interest that could happen between a game company. But at the same time, I don't know, if Fantasy Flight came up to us one day and said, we would love to advertise on your show and pay XYZ rates, I don't know if we could say no to them. So we just have been lucky. So far, the ideal that we don't want to take those kind of advertisers had never really hit us in the pocketbook because none of those kind of advertisers want to be on the show. Their approach is always, hey, send them a free game. They'll talk about it and that'll be fine, And that kind of works. So we've kind of looked to the other side of it. But the Kickstarter thing's getting very fuzzy because we're getting a lot of Kickstarters also on our shoutouts. And
emails that want us to check it out and want us to talk about it without going on the shout out.
And so you're getting them too. So that could be interesting because then what if they were shouted on our show for 3 months straight and end up spending a little bit of money with us, and then all of a sudden the game comes out and we review it? Do we have a credibility issue there? So it is very fuzzy in that area.
Yeah, but I think most people are discerning. I don't think that it's as big of a problem. I always try to not review something in the same episode that it's being advertised.
Right.
The best advertisers, as you say, are not actual game companies, but they're the other stuff. The game stores are really good at advertising.
Yep.
Since I'm hosted by Fun Again, we can't really advertise all the different online gaming stores. But if you wanted to, I think you could get all your advertisement from them.
Probably.
We have companies advertise, but right now the bulk of our money for advertising, as you said, comes from Kickstarter, and that's stuff that hasn't come out yet. So I never really feel bad about that because we're usually advertising before the review. Yeah. And when the review comes out, I usually have forgotten that they advertised on the show.
Good point.
But I'm also going to say this. I honestly think that there's a correlation to people who kickstart. For example, my Kickstarter previews that I'm paid to do. Most of those previews make the money for their Kickstarter. Now, why is that? I think it's because if a guy is on the ball enough to pay for a preview, he's also probably put more thought into his game.
Right. Yeah.
I think there's a correlation there. It's not because I'm the best previewer in the planet, although if you want to, I'm available. Special rate if you're listening to the show.
Just say D6G for savings.
But really, I think that some people, the people who send out review copies, are often more on the ball than people who don't. And, there's these different things that are in this. Like there's a couple companies right now who are discussing, I saw this on a Board Game Geek thread today, where they were discussing this way to get fewer review copies out there, where they would send a review copy to someone who would review it and then send it to the next reviewer who would review it and send it to the next one. Yeah. And they thought this was some fantastic idea because you only have to send out one copy. Right. And the reviewers would be happy to line up to do this.
Right.
If you tell me to do that, I'm going to politely tell you to jump in a lake.
Right.
In a sense, because to package a game up and send it off is a lot of work. And why am I working for you now?
Right.
Because that's what that basically has become at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
And so companies, Summoner Wars, Colby from Summoner Wars, he sends review copies out too. Well, if you blink, he'll practically send you a review copy. And you know what? Summoner Wars has gone up in popularity, but it's also a good game.
Right.
Colby knows how to advertise. His own podcast is kind of advertising where he's talking about what he's doing. And when you see that, so I usually, when people come with advertisement and stuff, usually they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I found that those people who are willing to pay for advertising on your show don't usually come with expectations. I'm sure it can happen. I'm sure that if someone came on my show and said, I'm going to buy space and we want to advertise game XXX, and then I review XXX and say, this is the worst game ever created. When you play it, you actually are dumber by the time you're done playing it.
Right.
I could see them pulling their advertisement. And, at that point, I would say, I understand.
Right.
We'll pull your advertisement. And that's fine. If they want to. So basically, we're asking listeners to trust us.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's just what it comes down to, trust. There are people out there who complain about me getting review copies. They complain about this. And when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter what I do. They're not going to trust me. And what can I do to win their trust? I don't really try that hard. I promise you that I will be honest in my review. And what else can I say? Because if you don't believe that statement, then nothing I'm going to do is going to convince you anyway.
Right. You're probably not a listener anyway. Because if you don't trust us on our shows, right, then you're not, and you don't respect our opinions, then clearly there's no value to listening to the show. I mean, one of the reasons that a lot of podcasters have these segments where we talk about the games we're playing or just talk about little random stuff is to get to know us, because in order to really appreciate our opinions on reviews, you have to kind of know the gamers you're dealing with. Is he the kind of gamer that likes the kind of games I like? Is he the kind of gamer that likes the kind of games my friend likes? And so if you don't trust us, if you don't trust our opinions, then yeah, none of it really matters anyway. And I think, Tom, that's a great way to sum it up. I think it comes down to, do you trust the hosts of the podcast you're listening to? Do you trust their opinions? When you take their recommendation on a game, does it match your expectations? Are you happy with what you ended up with? If that's the case, look, if Fantasy Flight became a sponsor of the show tomorrow and I went out and raved about Descent 2, I'm going to go out and rave about Descent 2 probably, right, whether Fantasy Flight pays me to or not, because it's going to be a great game. So that's going to happen. And it goes back to your other point too, Tom, about your Kickstarter thing. If it's a good game, these things sell because we talk about them, not because we're good salesmen, but because we're just excited about the product and it comes through, and clearly it's a good core product. That's what it really comes down to. These games do well because they're good games that we've had a chance to play and share our passion with them for, and that's what makes them great. It's not really about who paid us most money in which pocket, and that's why the game sells like crazy.
Yeah. Although on a similar note, like for instance, when Spartan Games and then Fantasy Flight hired me to start writing, I feel like we have to keep that up front that I'm getting, like that I'm working for those companies. But at the same time, we had a long history of loving those companies, and we haven't done anything that varied from that, that history since then. But that's because that's something that sometimes people bring up to me. A couple times I've had emails like, yeah, but you're that guy. Well, hey, I'm not sure who that guy is, and I'm pretty sure I'm not that guy. But I mean, like, we were loving Uncharted Seas before anybody else knew that, whatever the heck it was. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But and then the one other thing that I wanted to bring up ethics-wise, because it always intrigues me, especially after that awesome montage contest entry that we had, was the way that I trashed David Weber and his book, and then had to talk to him about it on air.
That was pretty funny.
And so that was possibly the most conflicted ethics-wise, I think I would, because what's your instinct going to be when you're faced with the guy that you love his books, and yet at the same time you hate this one book, and you have vilified this one book already online, so I mean on your show, so every listener knows how I felt about the book, and here's the guy, and I'm talking like right to him, and I think I managed to walk that fine line and kind of indicate that I wasn't happy with it, but the whole time that was happening, all I could think was like, oh my god, people gonna think that I just wussed out here, and so that was an intriguing moment for me, ethically speaking. That's all I've got to say about that.
I always hope that when I hate on someone's game from a publisher or designer, that I like one of their other ones.
Yeah.
So when I talk to them, I can say, oh, I like that one game you did in 1986. It's really fun.
Right.
Everything you did between here and there, well, but that one game was so good.
Right.
That's how I usually deal with it.
Yeah,
it
didn't live up to the expectations they set in this other masterpiece game over here. That was great. But unfortunately, the new one, not so hot. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, I think that's any other ethical conversation. I know we can go on for hours about this, but the guy at Dunkin' Donuts over here is giving us the evil eye.
Well, you mentioned about how much advertising is too much.
Oh, that's we get that a lot. I don't know why that is.
We do get that a lot.
What do you think, Tom? How do you guys decide how much is too much in your show?
As long as we're doing less than a D6 generation, we're okay.
Ouch.
No, I don't know. There's obviously though. I think the Spiel does the most.
Yeah.
And I asked them. I said, how many listeners have you lost? When I was considering doing advertisement on the show, and I was scared.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it would chase people away. Just like the videos I do, I was going to add the Google ads to them, and I thought, oh, people are going to start screaming. And you know what? No one did. And I got money. It was like, oh, what? Why haven't I been doing this sooner?
Right.
People do complain about the advertisements on the show.
Yeah.
But it's not a lot of people. And so we promised our listeners that we would only do two per show, something I've kind of regretted since, because we probably could do 3 per show now. But at the same time, I don't want to listen to too much. Our shows are shorter than yours, of course.
Right. Well, not really. I mean, you put out the same amount of content as we do in 2 weeks, I think, nowadays.
Well, right, but then it's 2 per each show.
Right.
So I guess it would be 4. It is what it is. I can listen to more talk about battle foam, I suppose, but I can kind of glaze over during that time and go get a drink or something if I'm listening to your show. But I don't know how much is too much. It certainly is an interesting thing because it can get to the point where it's annoying. Right. That's why I stopped watch. That's why I don't watch TV anymore, and I watch Hulu. And Hulu added I don't know if this is like an overarching thing, but I noticed in the past week between on their commercial breaks, they now are doing 3 advertisements instead of 2.
Yes, they've increased it. Yeah, I noticed that
and
too.
I'm like, what is this? Another 30 seconds? Come on. And but I was annoyed by that. So sometimes, but after a while, I'm pretty sure I'll be like, oh yeah, 3. And then they'll add a 4th one. What?
What? Right. It's like gas prices. $3.50 sounded bad, but now it sounds good compared to $4, right?
Right.
Advertising is too much. I think when it starts to irritate a lot of your listeners to where they won't listen to it because you want the advertisement to have punch.
Right.
You want listen. I'm telling people, hey, you're advertising to a group of people who want to buy your products. Mm-hmm. It's not like I'm listening to I'm watching NFL football and then a commercial for Maxi Pads comes on and it's like why
it's targeted, right?
Targeted, and it's good. I like that.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I think what my answer is because we've had we do what is it now 4 ads a show, Craig? Is that 4?
I think so. Yeah,
4 major ads.
If you count the
not counting shout-outs, which are like 30.
No, not counting those. But if you count the game salute stuff, I think it's 4. Yeah.
So it's like 4, and they're about a minute and a half each, maybe 2. So even if you said there were 2 minutes, that's 8 minutes an episode, and an episode is 3.5 hours long, right? So that's a pretty good ratio. That really blows the doors out of radio and television, right? Which is in a half-hour show, 10 minutes that's ads. You get 20 minutes you get 10 minutes in a half-hour show. So I think we really do much better than any other conventional form of media. But that said, I don't know that I would want to go much beyond what we have now in terms of the ad count. So I think we've kind of hit our stride on where we want to be, and I think we've got a good balance.
Another thing is that you have to realize that a lot of people who listen to these shows and stuff, without tooting our own horns to some degree, this is a lot of work. Mm. When you first start at the beginning, it's really fun, and it's still fun. I'm not sitting here saying I can't wait till this is over with Craig and Russ.
Right.
I'm enjoying myself, but I have to make the time to do it. And there's going to be weeks where where you say, I really don't want to do this, and that's why there's so much pod fading.
Right. Right.
So people they say, I'm not going to do it this week, and then pretty soon they just stop doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
So to keep you going all the time, you need to love what you're doing, but that financial aspect to it keeps you doing it, even when you don't necessarily love doing it. And honestly, there comes a certain point where people should get paid for what they do. Mm-hmm. We live in an era today where we think we should get content for free or for 99 cents max.
Right.
Thanks to the iTunes store. Thank you. And we think we deserve that. But there are people out there who are willing to support things. For example, Board Game Geek. Does Board Game Geek need my money? Probably not. But they need money to keep that site going. So I donate to them every year because I think it's a good site and it's worth the donations for my money. And I never sit around and think, wow, Aldi's a greedy person for running that site. No, it's his job.
Right.
Keeps me entertained. An entertainer is working just as much as a guy in an office.
Yeah,
and so with all this being said, and we talk about review copies and advertisement on the show, and it's a fine line. I think about it a lot, but I think about it even more now because I would like to eat.
Right.
And so I think about this, but I found that most of the people who yell about these things weren't going to give money anyway.
Right. They're not the ones that are going to pay the $2 for, because you could say, well, there's also, because I've asked some people, they come to me and they say, can you reduce the number of ads in your show? I said, well, I can give you an ad-free version for $1 an episode. Are you going to pay that? Oh no, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what's your choice, right? Because you're right, Tom. I mean, it comes down to it is a hobby in the beginning, at least. I mean, you're blazing trails that are awesome, trying to make it a real full-time job. But for most of it, it's a hobby. But I've said this before on the show. When you're trying to, at some point, if you're just doing it for fun, that's fantastic. But at some point, if it's not making at least a little bit of revenue, one day you're going to wake up and it's not going to be worth it.
Right.
But what's nice about the financial commitment is it works both ways, right? So yes, we make a little money on the side. None of us
Very
are.
little money.
Tom's not flying in a Learjet. Craig and I are still have day jobs.
Poor guy's eating bread.
Right. He's eating bread though, so he's working way up. But it's,
I have 6 kids. Remember that.
Right. God bless you, Tom. But the thing that we do, the other side of this is now we have fiscal responsibilities to other people, our sponsors, right? So because of that, we are much more likely to get our shows out on time. We are much more likely to get to put off a night of just sitting down and watching television and making sure our show gets out. And so to keep up with our sponsors who we promised things to, but also that makes you, the listener, have a better experience. So all of that comes together in a much more professional show. And I think in the end, that's why most people don't complain, because most people understand that, and they get that a podcast with ads is more professional and probably going to stay around longer than a podcast that does not have ads.
It's a synergy, if you will.
I mean, it may sound sort of self-serving, but I truly believe that. I think that you see the blogs too. If you see a blog with absolutely no ads on it, the guy's either a multimillionaire sitting around doing nothing, or eventually he's going to go away, or eventually he's going to have ads. Because at some point, he's got to, or he's making money some other way. At some point, he's got to figure out a way to make it a revenue, or it's just going to become too much work.
Right, and that's one of the reasons that I'm doing this full-time now, not because it's making me more money. It's probably not going to. But it's because I found that I was going to either have to stop the Dice Tower because my other stuff was taking up so much of my time, or go for that transition. And that was tough. I sat around and thought about it for a long time, and my wife kind of said, well, what are we doing here? She never expected board games to make any money at all, ever. And, when the review copies came in, she said, oh, good, at least, we're not buying games all the time. Because to get to review copies, people, you have to buy a lot of games for a while.
You do, yes. Yep. Well, Tom, we'd love to have you back on in the future, about a year from now, and hear the whole Dice Tower story. How you went from, hobbyist to multimillionaires. I'm sure you will be. It'll be fantastic.
I want to know what the name of your first jet's going to be.
What's too many kids or something? I don't know.
Do you have a name for your little mascot, the dice guy with the feet? What's his name?
No, we had a contest, and no one gave me a good enough name yet. Pip is the closest.
Because he needs to be on the tail, and that needs to be the name of your first
I like
plane.
Pip. As an English teacher, I like Pip.
Oh, Pip's good. I like that. That's great.
Well, I'm sure his expectations are great.
Nice. Well,
wow.
I went there. I went there. I did a Dickens joke on the Lost Chapters. That's right.
Cool. Well, is there any other ethic things we wanted to get out there before the Dunkin' Donuts kicks us out of the door here?
We probably shouldn't have stolen any of those donuts.
Probably unethical. Probably. Yeah. Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining us on the Lost Chapters here.
Tom. It's been great.
Really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to having you on the full show next week to talk about all kinds of fun things.
Woohoo!
Can't wait.
Woohoo indeed.
Thanks for purchasing a D6G Lost Chapter. Supporting the show helps it grow.
It's like rain on your wedding day.
Okay.